Have you ever paused in front of a simple object and felt seen, not because it spoke or moved, but because something about it stirred something inside you? A quiet recognition, a pull from somewhere deep within. Now look at these five chairs. Don't overanalyze. Don't pick the most beautiful or the most comfortable. Just feel. Let your body choose before your brain interferes. You see, this isn't really about chairs, it's about you. Beneath every decision we make, even the smallest, most ordinary ones, there's a hidden current, a pattern, a story. According to Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, our unconscious mind constantly communicates with us through symbols. What we're drawn to, what we avoid, what we notice first, all of it holds meaning. And sometimes those meanings reveal the parts of ourselves we've been taught to ignore. What if the chair you're drawn to isn't just a preference, but a message, a whisper from your inner world? Could it reflect a part of you longing to be seen, a wound that's been buried, a strength you've forgotten? This is your invitation not to judge, but to listen, to see beyond aesthetics and into archetypes, into the language of the soul. The chair you choose may reveal more than you expect. It could mirror your need for peace, power, freedom, or protection. It could point to the child in you, the warrior, the king, or the one who watches from the sidelines. Each chair is a story. Each story holds a truth. So take a breath. Let your intuition speak before your logic silences it. And ask yourself which chair is calling to you and why. 1. Did your eyes settle quietly on the first chair? Not because it was bold or luxurious, but precisely because it wasn't. Its simplicity whispered something familiar. Its curves unassuming. Its wood soft and grounded. It didn't demand your attention. It simply waited for you to notice. And you did. This chair, quiet and modest, calls to those who carry the world within them. Those who feel everything deeply, but speak only when it matters. If this was the chair that pulled you in, there's a good chance you've spent much of your life navigating inner storms while appearing calm on the surface. Carl Jung believed that outward simplicity often masks inner complexity. You may be someone who has learned to retreat to observe, to make sense of the world from a distance. Not because you're detached, but because solitude became your safe space. In chaos, you search for order. In noise, you crave quiet. You became the stillness in the storm. But here's the question. When did peace become your protection? Was there a moment, maybe in childhood, when being quiet kept you safe? When watching was safer than participating? When understanding others became more important than being understood? This chair, the observer's chair, is more than a preference. It's a pattern. It reflects an internal world rich in nuance, empathy, and insight. You are likely someone who notices what others miss, the shift in someone's voice, the way a glance lingers too long, the pause between words. You read the unspoken. Yet even the most beautiful silence can grow heavy. Sometimes the very traits that protect us also isolate us. When your refuge becomes your prison, you may feel unseen even when surrounded. You long for connection, but on your terms, without noise, without having to explain everything. This chair is an invitation not just to rest, but to risk, to step out from the shadows and let others see your quiet brilliance. To trust that your depth won't drown you in vulnerability, but guide you toward real connection. Because even the observer deserves to be observed. And sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that speaks softly, but truthfully. 2. What did you feel when your eyes were drawn to the second chair? Maybe it wasn't flashy or modern, but it felt reliable, solid, familiar. This is the guardian's chair, symmetrical, timeless, and quietly strong. It speaks of order, of traditions, of things built to last. If you found yourself choosing this chair, it may be because deep within you there's a longing for something steady, something unshakable in a world that often feels unpredictable. Carl Jung believed that when we gravitate toward symbols of structure, we're not simply admiring their form, we're answering an emotional call for grounding. Perhaps growing up, stability was something you cherished, or maybe it was something you desperately missed. Either way, it became a cornerstone of who you are. You learned to find peace in patterns, strength in routine, and identity in responsibility. This chair symbolizes more than just a love of tradition. It reveals the archetype of the protector, the builder, the one who holds things together when everything else falls apart. You are likely the person others turn to when they feel lost because you carry a presence that reassures, a calm that steadies. But strength, when overused, can quietly become rigidity. When life has taught us that control equals survival, we may resist change even when it's what we need most. We may build frameworks so carefully around ourselves that spontaneity feels like a threat, not a gift. Even joy can feel dangerous when we've trained our hearts to expect disruption. This chair invites you to ask, is your structure holding you together or holding you back? Are you guarding a precious sense of peace, or have you begun to guard yourself from life itself? Have your rules become armor that keeps you from being fully seen, fully felt, fully free? The guardian archetype is noble. It honors history, values integrity, and builds the foundations others rely on. But its growth lies in learning when to loosen the grip, when to let life surprise you, and when to trust that not everything sacred needs to be controlled. If this is your chair, it's not just a seat. It's a story of safety, of resilience, of love expressed through stability. But maybe, just maybe, the next chapter is about trusting the unknown. Because sometimes letting go of the blueprint is how we finally build a life that feels alive. 3. What drew you to this chair? The polished leather, the dignified shape, the quiet authority it radiates. This isn't just a chair. It's a throne, and if you chose it, your soul may be yearning for something deeper than comfort. It may be longing for recognition, for respect, for the right to finally rest without guilt. Carl Jung believed that behind the desire for power often hides an aching wound, a story of invisibility, abandonment, or never feeling enough. So when someone chooses the king's chair, it may reflect a part of them that had to grow up fast. A child who became responsible too early, a young adult who carried burdens meant for older shoulders, a soul that was told, you'll be loved if you succeed. This archetype is about inner authority, but also about the emotional weight of always having to appear in control. You may be someone who builds empires, leads with strength, takes pride in your ability to protect, provide, and persist. You wear dignity like a crown and lead with unwavering vision. But what happens when the king grows tired, when the applause fades and the silence becomes loud? What if beneath all that strength, there's a heart quietly wondering, will I still be loved if I'm not the strong one today? Choosing this chair might mean you're ready to look beneath the role and meet the person, the one who longs to be held without having to earn it, the one who's tired of performing strength and just wants to feel safe enough to be soft. The king archetype teaches us the power of presence, leadership, and earned wisdom, but its shadow whispers that vulnerability equals weakness. That's the lie. The truth is, real kings know when to rest. They know that laying down the crown doesn't mean losing the kingdom, it means finally sharing it. If you chose this chair, maybe it's time to ask, what would happen if I let myself be cared for? Not for what I do, but for who I am. Without the armor, the king's journey isn't just about ruling others. It's about learning to rule yourself with compassion, with balance, with the courage to admit I deserve softness too. Because real power doesn't shout. It knows when to whisper and when to listen. 4. Look again at that colorful chair, the one that seems too playful, too bright, too loud for a world that prizes seriousness. Did it call to you like a forgotten melody from childhood? If this was your choice, it wasn't random. It was your soul whispering, I miss being free. This chair doesn't blend in. It bursts forth. It's bold, expressive, full of stories and energy, and unapologetic life. And that perhaps is what your spirit longs for most, not just to survive, but to feel alive again. In Jungian psychology, this is the realm of the divine child archetype, the inner artist, the dreamer, the joyful rebel who remembers a world of color even when life has turned gray. If you were drawn to this chair, you may be someone who feels emotions deeply, who always sense the beauty in small things, the magic in the mundane. But chances are, at some point, you had to dim that light. Maybe you were told, stop being so sensitive. Or you were laughed at for your ideas, your dreams, your loud laugh, your bright clothes. So you learned to mute yourself to be accepted. You learned to shrink, to adapt to color inside the lines, because wildness wasn't welcome where you grew up. But inside you, that child never died. They've just been waiting quietly until it was safe to come back. Choosing this chair could mean your heart is ready to reclaim its colors. To stop performing adulthood like a checklist and start dancing through life with a little more wonder. But let's be honest, expression can also be a mask. Sometimes people use brightness to distract from pain. So ask yourself gently, is your joy authentic or is it hiding something? The divine child isn't naive, it's resilient. It survived the pressure to conform, and now it's asking, can I speak again? Can I play again? Can I feel fully loudly without shame? This archetype reminds us that joy is not a luxury, it's medicine. Creativity is not indulgent, it's truth. And the parts of you that feel too much, they're often the most sacred. If this chair chose you, maybe it's time to stop apologizing for who you are. Maybe it's time to turn up the volume on your light. Because the world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs more people who feel free. 5. You didn't choose the soft chair. You didn't reach for elegance, color, or comfort. You chose the one that looked unshakable, raw, stark, a mix of cold metal and weathered wood like something that has endured. This wasn't just a preference, it was a statement. A quiet declaration of the person you have had to become. In Jungian psychology, this is the domain of the warrior, or at times the hermit, an archetype born not out of ease, but out of necessity. If this was the chair that caught your attention, it's likely because you carry stories no one fully knows. You've been through battles not always with swords, but with silence, with survival, with the need to stand tall when no one else did. This chair doesn't invite rest. It demands resilience. And maybe that's what life taught you early. Don't ask to be held, be your own shelter. Don't cry, get up. Don't hope, prepare. And you did. You became someone others rely on. Strong, capable, stoic. But sometimes beneath all that armor, there's a heartbeat whispering, I'm tired. This is the paradox of the warrior. While the world admires your strength, no one sees its cost. How vigilance became your habit. How softness began to feel dangerous. How letting someone in now feels more frightening than facing pain alone. But Jung reminds us true strength is not just about protection. It's about knowing when to lower the shield, when to let your rawness be witnessed, not fixed, when to say, I've carried so much and I don't want to carry it alone anymore. If this was your chair, maybe life carved you into someone powerful, but in the process you forgot that you also deserved comfort. Not as a reward, but as a right. This chair is not your prison. It's a mirror. It's showing you where you've built walls and asking, are they still protecting you or are they keeping you from being seen? You don't need to abandon your strength, but maybe it's time to redefine it, not as silence, not as stoicism, but as the courage to rest, to trust, to feel. Because behind every unyielding warrior is a soul that once needed softness and still does. 6. Now, pause and think for a moment. Which chair made you cringe? Which one felt too much, too boring, too vulnerable? Which one did you instinctively dismiss without fully knowing why? That chair, the one you didn't choose, the one you couldn't imagine sitting in, might be saying more about you than the one you picked. Carl Jung often spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't want to see, don't want to accept, and certainly don't want to reveal. The chair you hate might be holding that shadow. Maybe it was too colorful, too loud, and you thought, that's not me, I'm not that kind of person. But what if your soul longs to express and you've been suppressing joy because you were taught that playfulness isn't productive? Or maybe the chair was too plain, too quiet. You said that looks like it has no life in it. But what if stillness frightens you because silence brings up feelings you've buried? Sometimes the discomfort we feel is not about the chair at all. It's about the part of us we've disconnected from. Maybe the throne of the king made you scoff, too arrogant, too much ego. But deep down, could it be that you yearn to feel important, seen, worthy of being respected? Or perhaps you hated the warrior's chairs too cold, too hard, too emotionless. Yet maybe you've been too soft for too long, and there's a quiet voice inside whispering, it's time to stand up, to say no, to build stronger boundaries. The chair you reject could be pointing toward a need you have learned to ignore, a version of you that's unlived, an emotion you've labeled as too dangerous, a strength or vulnerability you were never allowed to own. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So today, dare to turn toward what makes you uncomfortable, not to change who you are, but to reclaim the parts you've left behind. The parts you've been taught to hate may actually be the keys to your healing. That chair. The one you judge so quickly, it might not be your favorite, but it just might be your teacher. At first glance, choosing a chair might seem like a simple act, nothing more than a matter of taste or comfort. But beneath that surface lies something far more meaningful. Jung taught us that symbols, no matter how ordinary, are the language of the unconscious. The chair you chose today, it wasn't just a preference. It was a message from within. Whether you were drawn to stillness, tradition, power, playfulness, or strength, each choice reflects a story, a longing, a defense, a dream, or a wound you carry. These aren't just chairs, they're mirrors. They show us who we've become and hint at who we might be if we listen closely. And even more revealing than what you chose is what you rejected. Sometimes the thing that made you uncomfortable is the very part of yourself that's asking to be seen, loved, and reintegrated. There is no right or wrong chair, no better or worse, only different expressions of what it means to be human. And as Jung reminded us, healing begins when we make the unconscious conscious. So today you didn't just pick a chair, you had a conversation with your deeper self. Now the real question is, will you listen because the symbols are speaking and your soul is waiting to be heard? Thank you for joining this journey inward. If this video sparks something in you, take a moment to reflect, journal, or share it with someone who might need it too. And remember, what you choose tells a story, but how you grow from it is what shapes your future. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep listening to what your inner world is trying to say.